Session. Welcome back to another session of Fridays with Flo. Today we're going to be talking about the hidden costs of selling that no one tells you about. Right now we're experiencing a very unique balanced market, and things have shifted. Things have shifted quite drastically where a lot of people are used to experiencing homes sell pretty quickly. And now that is a hit or miss depending on how well you positioned your home. Right? So let's talk about the five hidden costs of selling that nobody tells you about. The first one I really want to dive into, especially given the current market, is seller concessions. That's a huge one because often home buyers are browsing homes and they, in this kind of market, are expecting the sellers to contribute towards their closing costs. And to be honest, even not in this market, traditionally, buyers as customers often think that it's normal or expected for the seller to pay their closing costs. And so I always talk to my buyers and tell them, hey, this is not a mandatory thing for a seller to do. These are your closing costs. You are buying this home for yourself, and these fees that you are paying are your fees to the lender, the attorney. These fees are going to the people that you hired for their services for the process of your home purchase. And so the seller may pay them, but they don't have to. It's not an obligation. But in positions where the seller's home has been sitting on the market much longer, it does tend to weaken your advantage. And so I do think last week's episode of why your home isn't selling and how to fix that is a really good video to go watch because those are some factors that can impact the length of your time on the market and where a buyer is going to come in and request for you to pay their closing costs. They think, well, your home's been sitting on the market a while. I'm going to offer you, let's just say 450 for your home. Let's just say you're asking for 75 and they're going to offer you 25K below. And so they're going to offer you 450 and they're still going to ask you to pay seven to $8,000 of closing costs. And so those seller concessions, those are what we call seller concessions, and those are additional costs that reduces your net as the seller. So those are some things to kind of keep in mind. And seller concessions can cover all sorts of things, whether it is going to go towards their closing costs, it can cover the rate buy down. Those are things that can help a buyer contribute towards their fees to close. It can also reduce their mortgage. Seller concessions can help the buyer with their down payment. So they're called seller concessions, but any amount given, depending on the amount, can actually go towards things. Now, oftentimes, this is actually good information for a seller to know, but really good information for a buyer to know. Seller concessions cannot be given in excess to the buyer. So if the buyer is saying, hey, I previewed this house, I've got an inspection report, and it's going to cost us about, let's just say, $4,000 to fix whatever thing we are looking at. That is of concern. Let's just say it's the foundation, or maybe it's the maybe we need paint. Maybe we need to replace the flooring. Those types of things can often make a buyer think, okay, well, the seller's going to give me $4,000 in seller concessions. I'm going to get that back at closing. That doesn't really work that way. The lenders try their very best for the buyers not to really get cash out at closing or cash back at closing. So what happens is seller concessions are used in the form of more money down on the house for the buyer. They're used in the form of contributing towards their closing costs. They're used to reduce the interest rate for the buyer. So they're used for other things. Now, if the buyer's really like, no, I really need this to be used for the contractor to get paid because I don't like I'm cash strapped as the buyer. Once I buy this house, I won't have $4,000 left. Which is not a really great place to be because you want to move in smoothly, pay turning on utilities. So that's a whole separate conversation for buyers. But $4,000 can be given to a contractor. So on the closing form, the HUD disclosure, the closing disclosure, the seller the seller concessions can go to a contractor or a handyman. So essentially, instead of it going to the buyer, it's going to go directly to a contractor to remedy those services. Now, that's a very, tough place to be because if they're going to get a check once everybody closes on the house, seller gets their payout. The seller's going to get their payout minus whatever fees they paid, including the seller concession. The buyer has just acquired the home, and the handyman's been paid. If it's not a handyman or contractor that you trust, it could very well mean that you might not hear and see from that contractor. So oftentimes it's better to get that issue repaired and taken care of before closing, versus, paying them out and not wanting to deal with it. So, yeah. Now, the second hidden cost of selling your home that you might not know about would be repairs and inspection negotiations. Okay. Unfortunately, some realtors strategize when they are representing their buyers. And so it's important for you to have a listing agent that is also quite experienced and an expert in listing in your market and negotiations, because if you don't have your strategy in place, the buyer agents can come and completely reduce the seller's net profit tremendously. And so, what I mean by that is the buyer's going to have their home inspection, and they're going to say, hey, these are some items that need to be repaired. And many home buyers, they're new at this, right? Or they're seeing this huge expense of an asset that already has a lot of work for to be done in the home as soon as they move in. So instead of it being beautiful, clean, and new, and they don't have to do anything, all they got to do is just move in with their own furniture and personal property. Instead, they're now having to think about fixing some items. And so oftentimes some things on the home inspection report may scare them, even though it might not be as significant. It's a concern for them. They kind of want perfection, especially if somebody is spending $400,000, right? Or more, or any amount that's hundreds of thousands of dollars of expense. And so, what happens for the seller if you don't have a listing agent that is strategizing and protecting you, and if you're a for sale by owner, this is really important for you to know. You're going to end up in a position where they already brought an offer at the beginning. Maybe that offer is reduced. It's not even the asking price, right? Let's say we settled for $10,000 below, and they asked for closing costs to be paid, $5,000 worth, right? And so not only did we do a $10,000 reduction on the purchase price at the beginning, and we agreed to pay $5,000 towards closing costs. We also are now in a position where we think we're all set. We're all good. The buyer's going to go get their home inspection, and they're going to come back and say, hey, we want these items repaired. Now you're in a position where you're getting this request to either repair some things, fix some things, or uh, have to give some additional funds to deal with that. Now, this is why it's called repairs and negotiations, because at least in North Carolina, we are an as-is state, which means that every home that is sold as is. Now, traditionally, customarily, sellers will often negotiate and take care of the items or offer some sort of seller concessions to repair those items for the buyer. So those types of things may happen. However, I always tell buyers to understand, hey, just because you see this home and you love it and you want to buy it and you're seeing some issues in it, doesn't mean that the seller is mandatory to fix those things. It's not, do you want this? Yes or no? Because all homes in North Carolina are as is. And sometimes you'll see some homes listed as is anyway, just to kind of let everybody understand out there, hey, we're not even going to bother with negotiations of repairs. We're not going to bother with anything. Don't even try after the home inspection comes because this is as is. So sometimes you might see that. And so if you don't see that, it's typically an open door of, if there's anything of concern, do bring it to us. And there is incentive for sellers to fix those things, maybe not everything, but a few things, or even offer some repair credit, because we want to get the home sold, right? That's the goal. You are under contract and going back on the market because we couldn't settle a deal. Or work it out with the buyer is one of the worst moves a seller can make. As soon as a home is back on the market, every buyer that could possibly go view that home is now wondering what's wrong with the house. Why didn't the buyer buy it? Even if it's because the buyer's financing fell through, even if it's because it's the buyer just really had a change of heart. Truly, there's no inspection that even happened yet. Even if it's nothing actually pertaining to the house, but rather the buyer's now in a more clear position, and they see that this is not the neighborhood for them, or this isn't the home for them, or they lost their job. So financing fell through, things happened. Everybody else is still going to automatically think it's the house. The problem is the house. So what happened? And so you're going to find the home sits on the market much, much longer. So communication is key between the listing agent and the buyer's agent or the buyer to help them understand nothing's wrong with the house, or this is what's going on, and we're happy to repair that and work a deal out. So, those are our first two things there, right? Seller concessions, repairs and negotiations, repair and inspection negotiations, and third, staging, cleaning, and preparation. This is a huge cost that most sellers don't think about. It's not every listing that's on the market that does this. Many homes you might view them and they're completely empty. There's no furniture there. Sometimes the seller is still living in the home, so you're seeing the seller's personal things there. However, preparation is so important to successfully selling the home. As I mentioned in last week's episode on reasons why your home isn't selling and how to fix it, staged homes sell 73% quicker than unfurnished, unstaged homes, right? And it's because it's that sort of psychological impression that it makes on the buyer. The minute they walk in, their first impression sets the tone, right? And so they start to feel, they start to hear, they start to smell. And so it makes a huge difference for that buyer's impression. And again, even photos, right? And we won't go too deep in that today, but because photos is a cost as well. But the whole process of cleaning, decluttering, staging, even if it's partial staging. Maybe the house is empty, but we're gonna go put a dining table. We're gonna put a few, flower arrangements, a few decorations on the walls to make it feel a little homey and less cold. Those types of things make a huge difference. I see it time and time again. Whether the home is poorly poorly designed with the current seller's furniture, decoration, all that sort of stuff. A lot of buyers will come in and they're going to have a hard time seeing themselves in there because they hate the furniture and the decoration of the current seller. I mean, I always try to tell my buyers, focus beyond that. This is going to be your stuff that's going to be here. All this stuff is going to be gone. I don't hear that much as much as the other, where if the house is completely vacant, empty, nothing's in it, and sometimes the buyers are having a hard time seeing themselves in there because although it's a beautiful home, they can't see the vision of where to put their TV, or is this kitchen or dining area big enough? Because it's in a very open concept. That's kind of the new trend as of the last 5 years, right? Open concept living rooms and kitchens where everything just flows within one room. And so they're trying to ask, well, where's the dining room? Oh, does the table sit right here? Would the dining table and chairs fit here? And so sometimes, actually last weekend, I showed a home to some first-time home buyers who that home was partially staged and they did a really great job. Although the home's been vacant and the house was sitting on the market since October and it's March, so do the math. And that home was on the market for a long while. And sometimes you'll find some homes having sat on the market for a while, and then the seller finally invests in staging to help buyers view. And shortly after that, the home goes under contract. It's just the type of people we are, right? We're human beings. We want to be able to see a vision, and it compels you to be able to see yourself there. I remember my every single time I go to a new construction home, I view model homes. I automatically want to buy a new house. because not because the house is brand new, but because all the beautiful furniture I'm seeing like a completely fresh new start for my life, you know? And then I said, Flo, your house at home is really great. You know, you're fine. You know, so it's just the feelings that it brings on for people. So staging, cleaning, and preparation. And staging can cost sometimes several thousands of dollars unless you have an agent that partners really well with great staging companies who can help you successfully stage your home in a very easy way. A lot of great listing agents include that in their fees. So when we think about what all is my agent really doing for me, they take care of everything, and not just opening doors, not just hosting open houses, not just marketing, but these sorts of things, these strategies of making your home sell pretty quickly, right? Because we know it hurts for your home to sit on the market longer. The longer it's on the market, the longer it's going to keep taking to get an offer, because again, buyers come up with so many things in their head, right? Um, a fourth thing, right? Closing costs and transfer fees. Closing costs and transfer fees is our fourth hidden cost that sellers might not know about. Um, well, while your closing cost as a seller is a lot less than your closing cost as a buyer, there are still some fees involved. And the good news is it's typically just your excise taxes for, depending on whatever state you're in, taxes for the county, recording fees, those transfer fees of with the deed from your name to the buyer's name. Those types of fees is really what's encompassed, and the attorney's going to charge a fee for that. I've seen fees range from $250 up to $400. It really depends on the attorney, truthfully, because they're the ones handling it. And then if you are asking for your profit, your net profit to be wired to you, then they might charge you a $79 or whatever wire fee. Versus if you do a check, it might be free. Now, if you have a mortgage payoff, then there's your mortgage payoff as well. So whatever balance that you have for your mortgage is going to need to be paid off too. So there might be a slight fee for your mortgage payoff. Maybe it's $55 or something like that. So overall, it will cost a seller typically a little under $1,000. And again, that is just completely different based on what state you are in. I know in North Carolina, that is a very common cost, $1,000 in fees on average. That is if you don't owe anything but a mortgage. Now, if you owe back taxes, you haven't paid property taxes, those types of things, as far as the sale of the house alone, you're just paying the fees of the deed, taxes, that sort of stuff. And then if you have an HOA, proration of the HOAs. All right. The last thing we haven't talked about yet, the fifth hidden cost. I don't really know if it's hidden. People typically know if you're using a realtor, it's going to cost you, right? So the fifth hidden cost that sellers might not know about would be your realtor commissions. And so I did this intentionally to talk about this last because this is typically a part of your closing costs. Okay. And so realtors, your real estate agent that listed the home for you is your representation. And so at the beginning of the preparation of the agency agreement to list the home, you've already negotiated what the fee is with them. And they've also told you what all it includes, right? So if you are getting the staging, you're getting the cleaning, you're getting, all sorts of recommendations for the right attorney to use, because I know that my attorney is only going to charge you $250 or maybe, whatever that is, then that's what you're getting, right? That you're paying a realtor for that. Now, on the other side is the buyer agent commission, which at least in North Carolina, it is not mandatory. Now, this is actually across the world, across the country. Sellers are not ever required to pay a buyer agent commission because a seller hires their own agent to represent them. So they are only responsible for paying their agent. Just like we would never expect a buyer to pay the listing agents to pay the seller's realtor, right? Or the listing agent, correct, right? So, but these things can happen. All of this stuff is negotiable. Realtor commissions are negotiable. However, whoever's paying is negotiable. And that is why customarily you might have seen where oftentimes the seller will pay the buyer agent's commission as well as their own agent's commission. Most of that really is because the average buyer doesn't always have the funds to fully cover the purchase of their home and their buyer agent's fees and get proper representation. So it's been a custom that sellers have paid this historically. But I always want to make it clear to people that there is nowhere that says that sellers are required to pay the buyer agent's fees, right? Now, that's always going to be dependent on completely the contract that you sign. But I know that for our standard North Carolina 2T contracts, it'll say for your standard agency agreement and listing agency agreement, it's going to say for the buyers, buyer agent will attempt to get the fee paid by the seller. However, buyer understands that the buyer is responsible for their agent's fees. So it'll say that for the buyer, and then for the seller, it's going to expect the seller to pay their agent, which is typically the firm directly, the brokerage that there is who they're paying. So these fees are paid at the closing table. Realtors do not get paid until the transaction is done and we sign on closing day. So essentially, we are in a profession where we do a ton of work up front with expectation to be paid when it's all complete. It means that we may spend money up front for our clients to best represent them, protect them, and offer them as best of an experience as possible, and just in an effort to make sure that the home will close, the buyer will close, and docs will be signed. And once everything's fully signed and the buyer's lender or financing has been fully funded, then it will go to the courthouse. This is how we do things in North Carolina. I know we are an attorney state. Other states might be a title state. So who is handling this is going to be completely different. We as agents are not handling closings. Attorneys do. We just coordinate through the process. And so once the deed is recorded with the county and the buyer officially becomes the owner, that is officially when the attorney will then go and disperse all funds. All the agents will get paid, the lender will get their payoff, the seller will get their proceeds wired to them. All those things will happen and transpire then. So those are your 5 hidden costs of selling that you may not know about, that nobody might tell you about. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Definitely like, and if you're on my YouTube, definitely subscribe and tune in next Friday for another episode of Fridays with Flo. I love the consistency that I've been seeing with a lot of folks tuning in. So thank you for empowering me, and I'll look forward to hearing from you guys in the comments.